welcome. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here. And I'd like to also, of course, thank my colleagues with AmCham and the Embassy for speaking slowly enough that I could understand. My Spanish is not quite good enough to speak, but I'm getting there in terms of understanding. A big thank you to SOFOFA and AmCham, without whose efforts we would not be here today. My colleagues at the Embassy, and we have Ellen and Veronica, who I'm sure many of you have received emails from Veronica. And of course, the states and cities that have traveled from the United States to be here, and sponsors, Foster Kwan, Procopio, and Employment Mobility Solutions. You will hear from many of them, and I hope you will all meet them today. It is a pleasure for me to come back here to Santiago. I was first here about 5 years ago, working even back then to build the case for Chilean companies to expand to the United States. And thankfully, and perhaps as a direct result of my personal engagement, Chilean investment has grown. It's another joke. I'll stop. I'll stop. I see. We have to be serious. So, what I'd like to do is spend some time setting the scene a little bit, talking about some of the factors why Chilean firms have and why global companies have chosen the United States. And I'll stop on that because I think there's no better representative in terms of why to invest in the United States than the firms themselves. And so there's an excellent panel immediately following my talk here. And then I'll talk about Select USA, which is the federal entity that facilitates, that helps companies from around the world to establish and be successful in our country. And so I think, first and foremost, it's important to restate, and thank you very much for your words, that the United States is open to foreign investment, open to global investment. We just call it investment. So there's no discrimination. In the United States, companies from around the world are afforded national treatment. This is part of our long-standing and unequivocal policy, which really does make us, you were right, the most open economy in the world, and a country where companies from everywhere not just can succeed, but do. So Select USA sort of operationalizes this policy, makes it real for companies. So thankfully, there are some good examples. And rest assured, this is not a situation of death by PowerPoint. It's limited PowerPoint slides, limited presentations. But I think what speaks better than logos of companies that you know well, and you'll hear from a couple of these, I have to say one of the most happy developments for me is the increased investment by Wines of Chile in the United States. This is not just an excellent occasion for me, but Americans across our country. And jokes aside, I think what we see are Chilean companies. Sure, maybe in the United States we don't know them as Chilean. We don't necessarily know their origin, but we know them as successful companies. That's precisely the point, that in the United States, it's a large market. And what we see are companies that undertake due diligence. They assess the market. They localize their business plan. They can really achieve results. They can maximize their opportunity for success. So I think what we see is that although Chilean investment is growing in the United States, there is a lot of opportunity to expand that position. I think it can be said that the Chilean investment position in the United States is underweighted. And this is official U.S. government data, and so I know there can be some differing data sets out there, but overall, I think there's just plenty of room for growth, and it can be said that the U.S. business community is thinking a lot about Mexico, Brazil, maybe Colombia as well in very positive terms. Well, there's Chile, I think, has the opportunity to make increasing positive news in the United States, creating those win-win situations where, of course, we want inbound investment because it brings, well, it brings jobs, it brings economic growth, also brings oftentimes new technologies, new management techniques, linkages. But the other part of that win-win is a company growing globally in the most dynamic market, still the largest economy, and returns on investment. After all, this is not a charity. What we're trying to do is ensure your success and your growth. So that approximately $1 billion position, it translates into quite a bit, contributing not just into capital expenditures on an annual basis and the jobs, but also exports. So what we're seeing is Chilean firms not just investing in the United States, but using us, albeit from a low base at the moment, but thinking about it in terms of an export platform as well. So there are a couple ways that we find the U.S. is assessed. International rankings, well, there's no way to ignore them. And so rather than not talk about them, I thought I'd highlight a couple. The most recent one to make news was A.T. Kearney's FDI Confidence Index. So A.T. Kearney is a global business consulting firm, business strategy firm. And we were so pleased that now for the second straight year, the United States is ranked #1 in terms of its FDI Confidence Index. And this is really a vote of confidence in the U.S. market by C-level executives around the world. If you're looking at one market to invest in, the confidence in what is that next market for capital expenditures, and typically a company's making maybe one investment a year, if that. Not all companies are making multi-billion-dollar investments. Well, for the second straight year, we're number one, and this was these 2 years, first time since 2001. So the momentum is shifting a little bit, and attention is being paid to the U.S. for good reasons. A couple other rankings, which I won't get into in detail, except perhaps to point out that the #4. Those of you who know the United States, you know that perhaps we don't like to be #4. And I'll live up to that stereotype for a few minutes. But in this case, #4, I gotta be careful in an open press environment, not so bad, because these are small markets. You know, these are homogeneous, small markets. And for a continental country with the most diverse economy on earth, to be ranked #4 in terms of the ease of doing business, this is a powerful signal sent to you that at least it's time to consider the U.S. So if these are, say, the rankings, more the formal rankings, more on the informal side, what we're hearing from companies over and over again has to do with the positive attributes about the U.S. market. Why do companies invest in the United States? There are a number of reasons. Here are a few of them. So, a growing market. So we're the only OECD economy of significant size with an increasing population. It takes a moment to ponder that sometimes, but many of our OECD peers do not have increasing populations. And we happen to have one. We're well over 300 million now. And in the U.S., we're early adopters, both on the consumer side and on the business side. So when you factor in the domestic market and free trade access, it becomes a formidable location, as I was mentioning earlier, not just for that domestic market, but as an export platform as well. We have an unparalleled culture of innovation and entrepreneurship, where the whole environment comes together, from the educational infrastructures to research and development, both public and private. Something like 30 90+% of all R&D in the world takes place in the United States. But it's that confluence of education and R&D and capital and world-class industry clusters where it all comes together, not just one place in one sector, but throughout the United States across a multitude of sectors. One of those pieces critical to innovation and entrepreneurship is protection of intellectual property rights. I think you know this about the U.S. market. I won't belabor the point, but IP protection is strong in the United States. You can feel secure in terms of creating in the U.S. We have excellent infrastructure, including education. This has led to a labor productivity rate that is really second to none. And I'm trying to not be kind of over the top with my superlative speaking about the United States. It's a little hard because it is my job after all. But this isn't me talking. I mean, it is me talking, but it's me talking about what we're hearing from companies. And these are your peers. So the labor productivity is really, it's an important factor. And then in the U.S., we have a historical openness to people, ideas, and culture that makes us a comfortable place for companies from around the world to do business and to find suitable staff that can execute your vision. After all, people will end up doing the work for you, and you want to make sure you have confidence in a very not just productive but diligent workforce. Now, there are a couple other factors that have made the United States increasingly attractive over the last few years, particularly with regard to manufacturing, and have led to essentially a manufacturing resurgence, renaissance in the United States. As the cost of production lower in the U.S., we've added this cheap or lower cost energy, which is a message that has rippled throughout the world. So we've been receiving hundreds of thousands of new manufacturing jobs in the United States just over the last 5 years. I'm not going to read this slide, principally because it's in Spanish, because it was translated. But also, trust me, I've committed it to memory. This is one of the frequently discussed topics and frequently asked questions. How is it that the United States is attracting so many manufacturing jobs? And a lot of it has to do with energy, but also policies that are assisting companies, not just U.S. homegrown companies, but companies from around the world to expand to the United States, establish operations, and then grow. We don't want you just to come, we want you to grow. This is part of the American corporate experience. So this brings us to Select USA. As you heard, we're the federal point of entry, a single point of entry for those companies that need one or want one with regard to facilitating investment in the United States. You don't have to work with Select USA, and you don't have to work with anybody. You can analyze the market, but if you have questions along the way, if you're looking for assistance, if you want introductions, at the federal level, we have this entity created by executive authority of the president, which, in my little circle is a big deal. And we work with firms seeking to make decisions about the U.S. market and the economic development organizations that are here, 10 fantastic ones. And so those are our two clients. We're not a profit center. It's all about creating jobs and economic growth and ensuring the success, or working to ensure the success, of global companies in the United States. We work throughout the investment process, and no question is too simple, for sure. And what's important to you as a company is what's important to us. And it's not just about bringing a company in, but it's about what we call aftercare, ensuring that you have the information and resources and access that you need while you're operating. So not just to come, but to maximize the potential to be successful while you're in the United States. the framework of economic development organizations throughout our country is significant, and we're privileged to have the 10 here. I would encourage all of you, perhaps many of you have already established meetings with them. If you haven't, take advantage of their presence here. These are conversations and contacts worth having. For us, with Select USA at the national level, it's important that you know we are the National Business Investment Ombudsman. So we are the problem solver. In the unlikely event that you might encounter a question or a problem with regard to a federal rule or regulation in our country, you know, or you will know now, you can come directly to me. You can work with Lenny Pisano, who's the leader of the commercial service here at the embassy in Santiago. So you have points of contact here locally, of course, but you also have a team in Washington who has to care about your success. That's part of our jobs. And again, no matter is too small. We've been privileged of working over the past few years with a number of global companies. And I would love to have this slide the next time I'm here with a Chilean example. It was not to be. So I'm going to just say a few words about Frulact, a Portuguese fruit processing, sorting equipment manufacturer that you've probably not heard of. Maybe you have. I hadn't heard of them. And we worked with them for a few months towards the end of their site selection process when they were considering locations, and played our little part. They ended up locating in Idaho. Now, a relatively obscure but successful Portuguese company comes to the United States, ends up in Idaho. Why did it end up in Idaho? It's a rhetorical question, but feel free to shout something out if you know it. This is streamed, so I have to be careful not to embarrass myself. So the reason is that Chobani, the purveyor of Greek yogurt in the United States, probably the company that single-handedly is now forcing Americans to eat tons of Greek yogurt every year, which I love, so it's good, opened their second manufacturing plant in Idaho. And companies, they want to expand for opportunity. This is great for Frulact, so they're opening a plant, they're employing 100 people, investing between $40 and $60 million, and we played our little role, and we're happy to do it. So whatever the industry sector, there is a way that we can help you if you need help in terms of analyzing the market and taking those next steps. In terms of those next steps, probably the next great opportunity to engage, to learn more about the market, will be in Washington, March 23rd, 24th of next year, the second Select USA Investment Summit. We expect about 2,500 people. There will be economic development organizations from throughout the United States. Last time, in October 2013, we had 49 states represented, 3 U.S. territories, and the District of Columbia. But more importantly, we had companies from more than 60 countries. I would very much like to see you in Washington for that important event so that you can take the next steps as you analyze the market and figure out what's right for you. Thank you all very much for your participation today. This is really just great to see all of you. I look forward to meeting many of you and staying in touch. So with that, I hope the message came across clear. Thank you once again.